Have you ever felt like everyone around you is trying to convince you of their infallibility, imposing their truth upon you? Sometimes, they are convinced that the world should conform to their beliefs. But is this truth or just egoistic vanity? In a world where opinions often replace truth, the ability to not only defend yourself but to manipulate the power of persuasion becomes the key to true power. This game is not for the weak, but for those who are ready to step beyond conventional boundaries. This video is based on the philosophy of Nietzsche and will be interesting and useful to those who are passionate about philosophy or wish to explore it. Master your mind, and the world will revolve by your rules. Well then, let's begin. They stand before you, armed with certainty, draped in the illusion of their own infallibility. Their truth is a fortress, walls built high, not to protect wisdom, but to keep doubt at bay. They do not seek understanding. They seek dominion over thought itself. And yet, you are not their captive. You are the observer, the one who walks untouched through their labyrinth of absolute belief. Do not meet their force with force. To wrestle with the self-righteous is to become entangled in their delusions. They crave resistance, for resistance validates them. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink into their mire of unwavering conviction. But you are beyond this game. Smile, not in mockery, but in the quiet knowledge that their need to be right is their greatest weakness. Their armor is thick, but hollow. The weight of their own certainty will crush them long before you ever need to raise a hand. Chaos is not your enemy. It is the great tide, sweeping away the fragile sandcastles of rigid minds. You stand upon the shore, untouched, watching as they fight to hold back the inevitable. They rage against doubt, against contradiction, against the terror of being wrong. But you do not fear the tide. You are the one who walks into the waves and does not drown. Let them declare victory. Let them bask in their triumph over an argument you never agreed to fight. The truth does not need a champion. It is not a banner to be waved, nor a sword to be wielded. It is the silent tide, ever present, ever patient, and in time, it will wash away even the grandest illusions. Do not fight them. Do not feed them. Observe them, and know this. To be truly free is to stand at the edge of chaos and not blink. Do not engage in battles that do not nourish you. Not every war is worth waging. Not every battle is meant for you. There are those who live for conflict, who feed upon it like starving beasts, who mistake noise for power, certainty for wisdom. Their words are not meant to enlighten, only to conquer. They do not seek dialogue, only submission. And yet, their greatest fear is not defeat, it is irrelevance. You are not obligated to be their opponent. Their rage, their certainty, their relentless need to be right, it all crumbles when left unanswered. They are like flames deprived of oxygen, screaming for fuel, desperate for a response. They expect resistance. They expect you to meet them on the battlefield of their choosing, to swing wildly, to lose yourself in the rhythm of their fight. But what happens when you refuse? What happens when their blade cuts only air, when their voice echoes into nothingness? They weaken. They wither. Because their strength was never real, it was always borrowed, stolen from the reactions of others. A great warrior knows when to raise the sword and when to let the fool strike at shadows. Do not waste yourself on battles that do not nourish you, on wars that leave you emptier than before. To fight is to expend. To argue with those who do not listen, to wrestle with those who do not reflect, is to throw your fire into the void and expect it to burn. There is a deeper power in silence, a greater victory in stillness. Let them call for war. Let them declare triumph over an opponent who never arrived. In the end, they will stand alone, clutching their hollow certainty like a rusted crown. And you will walk away, untouched, undefeated, and free. Wield silence as a weapon. Words are the currency of the self-assured. They build their fortresses with speech, brick by brick, layering arguments upon arguments, desperate to be heard, to be acknowledged, to be feared. Their power is in noise. Their dominion is in the endless tide of sound, where certainty roars and doubt is drowned. But you know a deeper truth. Silence is sharper than any blade, heavier than any stone. It is the abyss into which their voices fall, never to return. They expect you to meet them in battle, to parry word with word, to defend, to justify, to engage. They do not argue to discover, but to conquer. They seek reaction, for reaction is fuel. Yet what happens when the fire meets not wind, but the vast and unmoving night? What happens when their declarations are met with nothing but the void? Their strength falters. Their certainty trembles. Their own voice turns against them, bouncing off the walls of their mind like a prisoner desperate for escape. Silence is not weakness. It is not retreat. It is the throne from which the truly powerful observe the chaos below, unmoved, untouchable. In silence, you do not surrender the battlefield, you erase it entirely. What they mistook for war was merely their own echo. Let them demand response. Let them sharpen their tongues against the whetstone of their own arrogance. You owe them nothing. The greatest terror of those who seek control is to be ignored, for nothing is more unbearable than irrelevance. Their words hold power only if you grant them an audience. To remain silent is to force them to face the most dreadful opponent of all, themselves. And few can withstand such a battle. Sow doubt in their absolute certainty. Certainty is a fragile throne. It appears unshakable, towering above all, its ruler seated in the illusion of control. Yet beneath it lies nothing but sand, unstable, shifting, waiting for the weight of a single doubt to make it crumble. Those who claim absolute truth do not wield it. They cling to it desperate, afraid that even the smallest crack will unravel the entire facade. And it will. Not by force, not by confrontation, but by something far more insidious, a question. A well-placed question is not an attack, it is a seed. It does not announce itself with the violence of contradiction, nor does it crash against the walls of their certainty. No, it slips through the cracks unnoticed, quiet, unassuming, and begins its slow work from within. It is not a sword that seeks to cut them down, but a whisper that takes root in the mind, growing in the darkness, stretching its vines through every rigid belief, tightening, coiling, until one day, they wake to find that their certainty is no longer whole. There is nothing more dangerous to the self-righteous than doubt. It cannot be silenced, for it speaks from within. It cannot be defeated, for it takes no form. And once it begins, it spreads. Like a fracture in glass, like a drop of ink in clear water, it taints everything it touches. And they will fight it, at first. They will reinforce their walls, raise their voices, double their efforts to convince both you and themselves that they have not wavered. But they have. And the more they deny it, the deeper the question buries itself. Do not waste your breath on battles of proof and counterproof. Do not meet their force with force, their certainty with your own. One question, only one, is enough. A question that lingers, that festers, that haunts. A question that, once asked, cannot be unasked. They will carry it with them, long after you have left. And one day, when no one is watching, when the noise is faded and they are left alone with their thoughts, they will hear it again, and they will wonder. And that will be the beginning of their undoing. Do not argue, let their arrogance bury them. There is no need to shatter a wall that is already cracking. No need to tear down a tower whose foundation was never strong. The arrogant do not fall because they are pushed. They fall because they climb too high on a ladder made of their own illusions. They believe in their unshakable reason, in the fortress of their logic, in the invulnerability of their convictions. But the fool who stands too tall does not see the abyss at his feet. Let them walk forward. Let them proclaim their truth with unwavering certainty. Let them dig deeper and deeper, until the weight of their own words buries them alive. You do not need to fight them. The self-righteous are their own greatest enemy. Their greatest weakness is not ignorance, but the conviction that they cannot be wrong. A mind that refuses to bend will break under its own weight. And yet, the tragedy is this: they will never see it coming. They believe themselves untouchable, immune to contradiction, too wise to fall into the very traps they set for others. But reality is patient, and reality does not forgive hubris. So do not waste yourself in futile debates. Do not hurl your wisdom against their walls, for they will not listen. Instead, do something far more dangerous. Listen to them. Let them build their argument higher. Let them speak their truth with increasing certainty. Let them tie themselves tighter and tighter into the web of their own making. Do not challenge them. Do not resist. Simply let their words unfold to their inevitable conclusion. And then, step back. Watch as the ground begins to shift beneath them, as the contradictions reveal themselves, as the logic they once wielded as a sword turns in their hands. When they speak, nod. When they insist, agree. And when they realize that their castle was built not on stone, but on air, say nothing at all. There is no greater defeat than self-inflicted ruin. Let them believe they are winning. Let them stand on the edge of their certainty, looking down at the rest of the world with a smile. Because when they fall, they will have no one to blame but themselves. Use the external enemy, let them fight the void. There is a fire in them, a restless, consuming need to fight, to prove, to dominate. They are not driven by reason, but by conflict itself. To argue with them is to step into their arena, to become the object of their ceaseless battle, to let them sink their teeth into you and feed on your resistance. But you are not their prey. You are the one who steps aside, the one who knows that fire, when deprived of fuel, does not fade, it turns upon itself. Do not fight them. Redirect them. Do not resist their force. Let it move past you and strike at nothing. The self-righteous demand an opponent, a force to conquer, a shadow to box. If you deny them this, if you refuse to meet them on the battlefield, they will not stop fighting. They cannot stop. But now, their enemy will not be you, it will be the void itself. Give them something else to fixate on. A nameless force, an abstract idea, an imaginary adversary. Let them march against windmills. Let them sharpen their swords against the empty air. Their rage, their certainty, their need to assert dominance. It is a beast that must be fed. But you choose what it consumes. Let them attack the faceless, the untouchable, the infinite. Let them wage war against ghosts. And as they fight, as they argue, as they struggle against a force that will never answer them, watch as exhaustion sets in. There is no satisfaction in conquering nothing. No victory in besting an enemy that does not bleed. Without resistance, their fire does not spread, it burns itself out. You remain untouched, unmoved. While they wage their unwinnable war, you walk away, victorious without ever lifting a hand. Turn the situation around. Ask why they need to be right. Truth does not shout. It does not demand. It does not insist on its own victory. It simply is. But those who cling desperately to being right are not searching for truth. They are searching for something else. Their certainty is not the product of wisdom, but of hunger. A hunger to be seen, to be above, to command. And so, do not challenge their argument. Do not meet their words with counterwords, their fire with fire. Instead, do something far more dangerous. Turn the mirror upon them. Ask not what they believe, but why they must believe it so absolutely. What is at stake for them? What crumbles if they are wrong? What fear sits beneath their certainty, buried deep, trembling at the thought of exposure? They will scoff, they will dismiss, they will resist. But the seed is planted, and they will feel it, long after the conversation is over, long after they have proclaimed their triumph, long after they have convinced themselves that they have won. In the quiet hours, when there is no one left to persuade, the question will return. Why do I need to be right? And the answer unspoken will whisper back, because if I am wrong, then what am I? Few can bear to stand in that silence. Few have the courage to face the void that swallows those whose identity is built not on truth, but on the illusion of knowing. And in that moment, their battle is no longer with you. It is with themselves. And that is a war few ever win. Make them feel their opinion is insignificant. The world of the self-righteous is small. It is a fragile bubble, a universe revolving around their own beliefs, their own certainty. In their eyes, their opinion is the sun. All things must orbit around it, and any shadow cast upon it threatens the very foundation of their existence. But you are not bound to their world. You do not live under their sun. You exist beyond their reach, and you hold the power to unravel their universe with the smallest of gestures. Do not engage with their beliefs. Do not challenge their words head-on. No, let them stand proudly, unshaken, upon the ground they've created for themselves. Then quietly, without a word, remove the foundation. Take away their center. Let them realize, in that terrifying silence, that their world has no anchor, no grounding force. They are not the center of the universe. They are just another voice lost in the vast expanse of existence. Their opinion is not unique. Their truth is not absolute. They are not the authors of the story. They are simply characters, playing their part in a narrative much larger than they can imagine. And when you show them, without confrontation, without judgment, that their beliefs are no more important than the breeze or the dust, you render them insignificant. Not through force, not through argument, but through silence. You show them that their world can crumble without so much as a sound. When they no longer feel like the center, when they are no longer the stars of their own cosmos, they will feel what they have always feared, irrelevance. And in that irrelevance, they will be forced to confront the truth they have always avoided. The truth that their certainty was never about truth at all, but about the need to matter. Use the Socratic method. Ask questions that lead them to logical absurdity. Truth is not something that can be beaten into another's mind. It is not a fortress that can be stormed. To impose truth upon another is to insult both their mind and the truth itself. No, the wise do not force the truth. They guide it. They lead, not with answers, but with questions. Questions that pull at the very fabric of another's certainty, unraveling it thread by thread until they are left standing naked in their own contradictions. When someone believes they are right, when their opinion has taken root so deep that it has become a part of their identity, they are not open to reason. To confront them head-on is to engage in a battle they are already prepared for. But there is another way. The method of the great Socrates, the art of the question. Not questions that seek answers, but questions that make the answers impossible to find. Ask them not to defend their position, but to explain it. Ask them not to justify their certainty, but to define it. Let them speak their truths. Let them weave their intricate webs of logic and belief, and then, without warning, ask the question that forces them to confront the absurdity of their own reasoning. A question so simple, so devastating, that it shatters the very foundations of their argument. What happens when their logic bends against itself? When the very principles they have relied upon turn against them, when their own words circle in on themselves, falling into an abyss of paradoxes, they will not be able to stop. Their certainty will not break from the force of your challenge, but from the realization that their belief has no place to stand. They will try to answer, they will twist and turn, they will grasp at their own words like a drowning man clutching at the air. But the more they try, the more tangled they will become in their own contradictions. And in that moment, they will know. Deep inside, they will know that their belief was never about truth, it was about pride. It was about the need to be right, to be seen, to control. And you, by asking the right questions, have forced them to confront the emptiness that lies beneath their confidence. You have not defeated them with words. You have simply made them see the futility of their own fight. And that, in the end, is the greatest victory. Demonstrate confidence without seeking approval. In a world where validation is currency, where the loudest voice is often deemed the most truthful, the truly powerful are those who do not beg for acknowledgement. There is strength in self-sufficiency, a quiet, implacable power that does not depend on the fleeting winds of approval. The masses crave recognition, hunger for the nod of acceptance from those around them. They are like children seeking the gaze of their parents, as if their worth could be measured by the gaze of another. But you are not bound by such chains. To walk with confidence without needing to seek permission, without constantly looking over your shoulder to measure your worth against the reflections in others' eyes, is to move as a force of nature. Your confidence is not an invitation to be praised, it is a statement of existence. You do not need others to affirm what you already know. You do not ask for permission to be. And this is what makes you invincible. Those who rely on the approval of others are shackled by the fear of being forgotten, unnoticed, or dismissed. They wear their insecurities like heavy armor, constantly checking for cracks, desperately hoping that others will reinforce their fragile sense of self. And in that constant dependence on external validation, they weaken. They give others the power to shape their identity. But you, by standing firm, by remaining true to yourself without needing the applause, you take that power back. The moment you stop seeking approval is the moment you become unassailable. Others will try to mold you, to fit you into their narrative, but they cannot touch you. They cannot change what is unmovable. And as they squabble and wrangle for recognition, you remain unaffected, free, untouchable, and stronger than they could ever imagine. It is not the one who shouts the loudest who holds power, but the one who is quiet in their certainty, who moves with purpose without needing to justify their every step. You are not defined by what others think of you. You are defined by your ability to stand alone, by your refusal to surrender your worth to the hands of others. And that, above all, is the greatest strength. Laugh at their unyielding nature. The greatest weapon against the fortress of the self-righteous is not an assault, but a smile. A smile that drips with irony, with the quiet knowledge that their fortress is nothing but a house of cards. You see, when the arrogant believe they stand tall, unshakable, upon the pedestal of their own convictions, they are not immune to the piercing force of laughter. Their pride, their unyielding stance, these are fragile illusions. And laughter is the hammer that destroys them without effort. The self-assured think their certainty is a shield that keeps them impervious to the world. They stand in their fortress of unwavering belief, believing that no one can touch them, no one can shake them. But there is a truth that eludes them, a truth that most never see. Certainty is brittle. It is built on the shaky ground of ego, pride, and fear. And what could be more fragile than something built on the desperate need to be right? To never waver, to never admit error. When you laugh at their unwavering stance, you do not simply mock them. You expose their greatest vulnerability. You show them, and the world, that their foundation is not made of stone, but of air. Laughter is the most subtle of truths, a weapon that cuts deeper than any argument or confrontation. It is the weapon that turns their strength into weakness, their pride into foolishness. With a single laugh, you expose the truth that they have so desperately tried to conceal. Their certainty is not wisdom, it is fear. Laughing at them is not an act of mockery, it is an act of liberation. It is showing them, in a way that words never could, that their authority means nothing. They may scream, they may insist, they may try to defend their walls with every ounce of their being. But laughter, with its lightness, its irreverence, strips away the illusion that they are anything more than frightened children pretending to be giants. When they sense your laughter, when they see your quiet smile in the face of their certainties, they will know. Deep within, they will know that they are not as strong as they seem, that their power is built on fragile beliefs, easily shattered by the simple act of seeing their world for what it is. And they will never recover from it. Laugh and you will watch them crumble, not from the force of your ridicule, but from the revelation that their fortress was never as strong as they believed. Laughter, the most natural of reactions, becomes a revolutionary force that reveals their weakness in a way no confrontation ever could. And that, in the end, is the ultimate victory. Shift the topic when they gain momentum. There is a peculiar power in momentum, a force that builds slowly, imperceptibly, until it sweeps all before it, unstoppable, relentless. This momentum, however, is not a product of strength. It is the product of inertia, the result of a mind that has found a path and will continue down it, regardless of whether that path leads to wisdom or folly. It is a mind that no longer questions, no longer doubts, but simply moves. And when they begin to gather speed in their certainty, when their words tumble over one another, gaining power from their own rhythm, you must act swiftly, like a stone cast into the stream, disrupting the flow with a single shift. Do not let them gain their stride. Do not let them build the momentum that feeds their conviction. When they feel that their ideas are taking root, when their confidence swells like a storm gathering on the horizon, this is the moment to strike. Interrupt them, not with force, but with subtlety. Shift the conversation, introduce a new angle, challenge the very premises they have built their arguments upon. You will not need to fight their words. You will simply change the game. The moment you disrupt their inertia, you destroy their power. They will flounder, lost, unable to reconcile their carefully constructed narrative with a new direction you have introduced. They will attempt to return to the course they had set, but the speed they had gained will be their downfall. They will be off balance, trying to catch up to a conversation that is no longer theirs. They will struggle to regain their footing, not realizing that their strength was never in their words, but in the momentum that propelled them forward. You do not need to overpower them with logic, or to drown them in counter-arguments. All you need is to break the flow. The moment you stop their motion, their narrative begins to unravel. Without the current of their own conviction to carry them, they will stumble. Their arguments will become incoherent. Their confidence will deflate. And in that sudden disorienting shift, you will have done what they feared most. you will have shaken the ground beneath their feet. In that dissonance, in that confusion, their strength will dissipate. And you, the quiet observer, will watch them falter, all because you did not allow them to gain momentum. You did not let their certainty sweep you along with it. You simply shifted the conversation, disrupting their rhythm and leaving them to question the very stability of the ground they once thought solid. Do not argue with a fool, lest you become one. There is a peculiar tragedy in the life of the wise. They know when to speak, and they know when silence is their truest ally. To engage in certain arguments is to lower oneself to a level where reason is no longer the compass. It is only noise, only a battlefield where the intelligent become muddied, dragged into the quagmire of baseless beliefs and unprovable certainties. The wise, with their keen understanding of the nature of man, recognize that there is little value in sparring with those who cannot or will not see reason. To argue with a fool is to surrender one's intellect to a battle that has already been lost. The fool does not seek truth. The fool seeks only the satisfaction of their own ego, the affirmation of their unchallenged beliefs. When you argue with them, you are not engaging in a dialogue. You are entering a contest where your intelligence is measured against their ignorance. And in that contest, the only possible outcome is that you will lose something far more precious than a fleeting victory. You risk losing yourself. The very moment you begin to argue with a fool, to fight them with the same passion and noise, you align yourself with their chaotic, misguided energy. You become entangled in their trivial pursuits, and in doing so, you abandon the higher path. Great minds, those who have known the heights and depths of human thought, understand the futility of this. They understand that their time, their energy, and their focus are not to be squandered on battles that cannot be won. Not because the truth is elusive, but because the fool's mind is a fortress that cannot be breached by logic or reason. The fool's weapon is obstinacy, and in the face of that, wisdom remains silent, content in the knowledge that no argument can shift the course of a mind set in its ways. There is a lesson here, one that cannot be overstated. When you engage with a fool, you step into a web of confusion that will only entangle you. Your words, no matter how sharp, no matter how well constructed, will be lost in the noise. They will become part of the cacophony, blending with the foolishness, unable to cut through the dense fog of ignorance. And you, in your desire to win, will become just as lost as they are. You will find yourself drawn into their world, a world where reason is drowned in stubbornness, where clarity is overtaken by arrogance. The truly wise, then, know that there are battles that are not worth fighting. They know that to argue with a fool is to risk diminishing one's own light. It is not an act of cowardice to step away from such a conflict. It is an act of self-preservation, of recognizing that there are wars that are beneath you, that some people are not worthy of your time, your energy, or your intellect. Great minds do not seek to prove themselves in petty squabbles. They rise above them, knowing that true victory lies in restraint, in the refusal to engage in a war where no truth can emerge. So remember this: when you find yourself tempted to argue with a fool, take a step back. The silence you hold will speak louder than any words could. You will not lower yourself to their level, and you will retain the clarity of your own vision. To argue with a fool is to surrender your time and your intellect to the abyss of ignorance. To refuse to engage is to preserve your own greatness. And that, in the end, is the greatest victory of all. Swap the concepts. Make them defend your viewpoint. There is an art to victory that lies not in brute force, not in a clash of ideologies, but in the subtle manipulation of thought itself. This art is not for the faint-hearted or the impatient. It is for the ones who understand the intricate dance of persuasion, the ones who know how to turn the tides without a single direct confrontation. It is a technique so powerful, so sublime, that it does not merely make your opponent argue for you, it forces them to. This is the art of making them defend your beliefs, all the while thinking they are attacking your position. It is a form of intellectual alchemy, a trick of the mind that turns their opposition into an endorsement. The key to this mastery lies in one simple yet profound move: invert the narrative. Make their arguments not a challenge to your ideas, but a defense of them. The moment you grasp this, you begin to understand the true nature of power in conversation. Rather than asserting your beliefs directly, you introduce an idea so compelling, so subtly persuasive, that it forces them into a corner. Their only escape becomes the defense of a view they initially opposed, your view. They will argue for your truth without ever realizing they have become your greatest ally. Think about it. How many times have you encountered someone so certain in their position, so rooted in their perspective, that it was impossible to sway them? Now, imagine turning that certainty upon itself. Imagine flipping the roles, reversing the positions. The person who once stood firm against you is now compelled to justify the very concepts they once rejected, not because you have convinced them with logic, but because you have carefully redefined the terms of the debate. This is not a victory of argumentation, it is a victory of perception. You have taken the battlefield of ideas and transformed it. You have turned their arguments into shields for your own perspective. You have reshaped their understanding without lifting a finger. It is a feat so elegant, so refined, that it leaves your opponent in the strange position of defending the truth they once rejected, blind to the fact that they are merely serving your cause. In the great struggle of minds, victory does not always come through direct conflict. Sometimes, the most potent weapon is a shift in perspective. You must master the art of shifting the focus, of reframing the argument so that it becomes impossible for your opponent to challenge your beliefs without first defending them. And in doing so, you have not only won the battle, you have left your opponent with nothing but the remnants of their own defeated logic. There is a profound freedom in this technique. It liberates you from the need to always be right, to always win through force of will or intellect. Instead, you become a master of the conversation, the one who directs the flow of thought without ever needing to raise your voice. Your ideas are no longer yours to defend. They are the ideas your opponent must now fight to uphold. You have turned the tide in your favor without ever truly battling for it. This is the ultimate form of intellectual power, the ability to make your adversaries your champions. The moment you learn this technique, you will see the world of debate, of intellectual engagement, in an entirely new light. You will realize that true mastery lies not in overwhelming your opponent with facts, but in overwhelming them with a shift in perception. And in that shift, you will find yourself standing not just victorious, but unchallenged. Become a mirror, but distort the reflection. There is a subtle, almost hypnotic power in the art of reflection, a power so refined that it does not simply echo what is presented to it, but magnifies it, bends it, twists it until the original image is unrecognizable. In this distorted mirror, truth loses its clarity, and the self-assured become unmoored. The great masters of influence understand this dynamic intimately, and they use it not to reflect the world as it is, but to show others their own reflection through a lens that exposes their flaws. It is a quiet, ruthless form of power, the ability to force someone to see themselves as they truly are, or perhaps as they would rather not be. When you engage with someone who stands firmly entrenched in their beliefs, when you witness their confidence grow with every word they speak, you must understand this simple truth. You are not merely conversing with them, you are facing a mirror. They show you their self-assuredness, their certainty, their unwavering perspective. And you, with cunning and grace, must become that mirror. But not the mirror they expect. No, you must distort their reflection. Amplify their words, their tone, their mannerisms, but take them to their absurd limits. When they present their beliefs, their rhetoric, often overflowing with pride and a sense of invincibility, you must hold up a mirror that reflects not just what they say, but the excess that lies within. Exaggerate their style of communication, their habits, their presumptions, until it becomes so overblown, so ridiculous, that they can no longer deny the absurdity of their own stance. The very words they speak will come back to them twisted, disfigured, magnified to the point where they will see themselves as they truly are, not the wise philosopher or the invincible debater, but a child throwing tantrums in the marketplace of ideas. This method is both a revelation and a weapon. Through reflection, you strip away the veneer of confidence that protects them. You expose the raw, vulnerable core of their argument. What was once a proud assertion becomes an embarrassing display. What once seemed like unshakable logic becomes an unsightly mess of contradictions. And in that moment, they will no longer be able to hide behind their eloquence. They will be forced to confront the true nature of their words, twisted beyond recognition, and see the folly of their own pride. The brilliance of this tactic lies in its subtlety. You are not attacking them directly. You are simply reflecting their image back to them in a way that forces them to witness their own absurdity. The mirror does not judge, it merely shows. But the distortion you introduce, through exaggeration, through turning their words into caricatures of themselves, acts as a lens that reveals what was previously hidden. They become the fool in their own play, unable to escape the distorted version of themselves that you have unveiled. And in this moment, something profound happens. The illusion of power, the confidence they carried with them, begins to crack. It is not your arguments, your logic, or your intellect that has defeated them. It is the mirror you have held up, the reflection you have distorted. They see their own reflection and realize the monstrosity they have become, a creature of pride and self-righteousness, trapped by their own certainty. This technique is not just a strategy of confrontation, it is a form of enlightenment. You show them the dangers of their arrogance, not by directly accusing them, but by making them experience it through their own distorted reflection. And in that experience, they will feel the sharp sting of self-awareness, the realization that their grandiose ideas were nothing more than hollow echoes. You have made them confront their own vanity, their own foolishness, and they will never look at themselves the same way again. The power of this technique is not in its cruelty, but in its brilliance. You do not need to defeat your opponent with force. You do not need to raise your voice or sharpen your words. You simply need to reflect their own excesses, their own pride, back at them, and in that reflection, you will leave them broken, not by your arguments, but by their own image. The greatest victory, learning to not react. There is a power far greater than any physical conquest, any verbal triumph. It is the power of restraint, the ability to control the tempest that swirls within you, to stand unmoved when the world seeks to provoke you. The greatest victory is not won in the heat of battle, nor through the cutting precision of your words. It is won in the silence, in the stillness, in the moments when the world expects you to react, and you choose not to. To not react is to ascend beyond the trivialities of the flesh and the frailties of the mind. It is to step into a realm where your emotions do not govern you, where the external forces that seek to rattle your composure have no grip on your soul. In that moment, you are untouchable. You become a force that cannot be moved, a being whose calmness is so profound that it unnerves those around you. The more they seek to provoke, the more they fail. For in your non-reaction, you reveal something far greater than what they can understand. You reveal freedom. The world is filled with noise, arguments, distractions, provocations. And yet, the one who masters himself, the one who can remain unaffected by the petty squabbles of others, stands above them all. It is not weakness to be unmoved, but rather the highest form of strength. True power lies in the ability to see the world for what it is, to understand the provocations for what they are, and to remain unshaken. The one who reacts is caught in the web of their own emotions, a slave to the whims of others. The one who does not react is free. And in that freedom, there is a power so profound that those who wish to control you are left frustrated, bewildered by your indifference. When you do not react, you become an enigma. You are the calm eye in the storm, the rock that does not break under pressure. And this drives them mad. It is not your strength they fear, it is your indifference. Your control over your emotions makes you a mystery to them, something they cannot predict, something they cannot manipulate. They try to provoke you, but you remain unmoved. They try to anger you, but you do not bite. And in this refusal to engage, you strip them of their power over you. You become their greatest nightmare, an opponent who cannot be rattled, who cannot be provoked, who cannot be conquered by the petty tricks they so often rely on. There is a certain cruelty in this form of victory. It is not a cruelty that requires words or actions. It is the cruelty of silence, of calm, of being untouched by their attempts to sway you. They will not understand why you do not react, and this will gnaw at them. For in their quest for validation, in their need for affirmation, they will find themselves helpless against your composure. They will strike, they will shout, they will try to elicit some sign of weakness from you, but they will receive nothing. And this nothing is the most crushing defeat they will ever experience. It is not enough to win a battle, to defeat an opponent in the arena of ideas or words. True victory lies in remaining unmoved by the chaos around you. It is a victory that transcends the physical, the intellectual, and even the emotional. It is a victory that renders you untouchable. And as you stand in your stillness, untouched by their attempts to provoke you, you will realize that it is not them who are in control, but you. As we close this journey through the art of confrontation and mastery, remember this: true strength lies not in the battles you fight, but in the wars you choose not to engage in. Stand unmoved, embrace silence, and let your presence speak louder than any word could. The greatest victory is the one that leaves your opponent questioning their own power, while you remain calm, untouchable, and free. May you find the strength to not react, the wisdom to choose your battles, and the mastery to rise above it all. Take control of your mind, and you will control your world.